Last month on the Madison, a buddy of Nick Conklin's tried everything he could to force an indicator into a skinny, windblown run, 30-mile-an-hour gusts, a 5-foot high bank behind him, and flies that kept getting yanked through the surface as it touched the water. He finally picked up an 11-foot two-hander, took a couple of steps in the same water that shut down everyone else. He swung up to healthy Madison Browns. Not because he's a hero, but because he was willing to change the technique when the river clearly demanded it. This is the Wet Fly Swing Podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. That little moment says everything about today's episode. Nick Conklin has spent years traveling from Montana to North Carolina to the Texas coast. He's been involved in the designing of TFO rods, testing new materials, and breaking down casting from some of the greats like Jason Randall and Ed Jaworski. Today, we're going to get into high sticking versus indicator versus swinging, and why none are better, but why you might choose either of those, and how on windy days this exposes your casting fundamentals. We're also going to get into the Skagit heads and lighter two-handed and where this is going to fit well as far as Trout Spey. If you're interested in learning more about Trout Spey and getting into that, we're going to get into some rods and lines that you need to get started. We're going to hopefully take the guesswork out of it today. And we're also going to get some of Nick's background on what he's into most and how that's been successful through TFO. All right, let's get into it. You can check in with Nick at tforods.com. Here he is, Nick Conklin. How you doing, Nick?
Doing very well. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Great to have you back on here on the podcast. We were just looking back at it. It's going to be turning around to 26. It's going to be a couple years, episode 599, when we had you on and we were talking about kind of fish in pressured waters. You had a new book, I think, that was coming out at the time, and then we talked about some outfits with TFO. Today, we're going to get a little bit of an update on some other stories. I think we're going to focus a little bit on indicator versus high sticking and some other, techniques out there. But I also want to get an update on TFO, what's new there. Give me an update. What have you been the last year and a half or so? What's been anything new out there with you or TFO?
Yeah, I've been fishing a lot, been working on a bunch of new rods, on the TFO side of things, doing a lot of the consumer shows still and getting out, talking to folks and getting them to cast rods, talk about reels, some new exciting products this year. We got 2 new combo kits that we just introduced this past summer at ICAST, and then a kind of more of a high-end, premium, faster, stiffer type of saltwater rod. So, just trying to keep refreshing things and provide some high-quality tools for people and encourage them to keep fishing and enjoying the sport.
Nice. Remind us again, what is your role with TFO there?
Yeah, so I am the category manager, which is just a corporate fancy term for the guy that handles all the product design, development, sales. And then I work with our sales reps and our advisors, folks like Jason Randall, people like that you've had on your show before, and work all the consumer shows and events. I run that component of the business as well.
That's right. Yeah, we've talked about that. We've had some a number of different TFO ambassadors and folks on the show. And part of the TFO, the history, just so that if those don't know it, they're new, is that TFO really, I guess you can go back to the original founder. He made a connection with Lefty Cray, and really some of the biggest names in fly fishing was able to bring them into the TFO world, and that really, it seems like that helped to launch them. Do you think that's a big part of the success early on with TFO?
Oh, absolutely. And he was able to bring in some pretty diverse personalities. You had someone like a Lefty who had really no formal education or physics, science background, but was able to describe how to load a rod, how to unroll a fly line in a very interesting way that connected with a lot of people. Then on the opposite side, you had someone like Ed Jaworski, who's been an absolute student and still is, which, there's a lot of mornings we'll have an email exchange or be on the phone, and I'm just blown away by his energy. He's in his 80s now, but he came from it and comes from it from much more of a physics, science background. And, he'll spend time working with golfers, and he'll admit he doesn't golf, but he just likes to understand how they proceed through a swing and hit the ball. And Rick Pope was able to bring in a lot of interesting personalities that approach the sport from a lot of different point of views. And that definitely helped, help start the business, help start the company. And then since then, a lot of just good personalities that are entrenched in the sport that are really good with working with people and really understand different techniques in different areas of the country, different areas of the world, and just how to help improve people's time on the water and get them to a place where they can cast and they can fish and have fun and really start to, build the skills to become a proficient angler.
Right. And casting is kind of the number one. I keep going with our group. We have a Wet Fly Swing Pro, our community. I'm trying to build some, some information there around what's the first thing people need to work on, when they come in, if they're, whether they're experienced or new. And it feels like casting is the one. It's always the thing, you got fly tying, you name the thing, reading water, but it feels like casting is the biggest thing. Do you focus on, like, how do you guys think about the casting? Because I know you do a lot, you got the two-handed stuff, you got everything. How do you focus to help just providing value for anglers out there, short of like obviously the rods you deliver?
Yeah, outside of the rod component, I mean, a cast, right? When you hit it, and you feel like an all-star. But when you're not hitting it, you get frustrated, right? And everything else starts to fall pretty quickly. And then now you're pissed off and heading back to the truck and just frustrated, where I think most anglers can understand, well, this fish didn't really care for this fly. Let me try something different, right? There's just a different level of frustration, but also, to me, a different level of success and happiness when it comes to really nailing your cast and understanding what's working right.
Yep.
So yeah, the tackle, the equipment definitely helps, but to me, it's always just time spent doing it. I see a lot of folks that maybe they only can fish once or twice a year, and then they put the rod away and they never really take the time to go out and practice, right? Go practice in a park, go practice somewhere that's just not on the water, like the first day of your trip, right?
Right.
So there's that element of that preparation that I think a lot of people either underlook or just forget that's critical to being good at any sport, right?
That's right.
Any professional athlete doesn't just step on the field and all of a sudden they're an all-star, right? It takes a lot of time and practice, and that at times can be tricky, right? Because this is a leisure time sport for folks. So it's, I know you want to have fun doing it, but with a little bit of work, a little bit of practice, finding the good instructors out there, hard with simply watching people, that's what I think a lot of people forget, right?
Yep.
Fly fishing in general. We spend all our time staring at what other people are wearing, what rods they're buying, what hip pack they're buying, everything else about them, right? We're freakishly visual and obsessed with people, but we never really take the next step to understand, well, this is how this person's being successful, right? This is really what
how they're doing it.
Right? Then retain some of that information.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ed. I think that he would be a good guy to probably follow and study, right? Does he have, I know we talked about fly casting. I know the episode, we'll put a link to the show notes that we did with him, and it was really awesome, and he broke things down. If somebody's struggling with the cast, does Ed have information out there? Where would you send somebody if they're kind of wanted to get their next step on, kind of helping?
Some of his most recent book is a great opportunity to learn, but there's a lot of good videos if you just learn in a different space. Then the other thing is, come to a consumer show. Ed works a lot of them for TFO. He's there. He's always willing and happy to talk to people. At some point you may need to stop him because he could be 3 hours into a conversation and your brain may be exploding with different information. But if you're not a learner that can pick things up reading a book or watching a video, there's a lot of good in-person resources still. And that's definitely a great place to just can ask some questions or let somebody watch you too. That's one of the things. We carry cell phones around all the time, but people forget. Why don't you videotape yourself casting? And if you're not comfortable doing it in front of other people or taking a lesson at a shop or with a guide, casting instructor, whomever, just video yourself and you can sit and watch. Oh, my rod tip's kind of dipping here. It's not staying on a steady path, or my hauling hand is not following that line back up to the stripping guide well enough, or whatever the scenario is. There's some ways you could do it if you just aren't comfortable in a public setting or working with new people.
Yeah, the video is and that's something we're doing in pro community is we've got some amazing instructors who will take a video. If you video yourself, they'll analyze it and they'll give you some feedback. And I'm just looking back at Ed Jaworowski. He's got 2 seminal books on fly casting. The Cast was 2005 and Perfecting the Cast in 2021. Those are a couple of big ones. And I know he has more out there, right?
Yeah, some really great resources, and he's still pretty active on the club circuit too. So a lot of local events and doing presentations for folks. And there's a lot of good instructors out there and a lot of them that aren't in that Lefty Cray, Ed Jaworowski stratosphere, but they can be very helpful, right? You just kind of have to search them out and find the instructor that works and you can understand and relate to.
That's right. Who are some of the other, I know you mentioned a few of your ambassadors, I guess. Who are some of the other people working with TFO that you're spending time talking to about rods and all that stuff?
Yep. So one of the guys I work with probably most, and if I don't talk to him once a week, it's probably 2 or 3 times a week, is Jason Randall, who I know you've had on his show. And he brings a very interesting and different angle, different technique approach to the TFO family, which has been great. So been able to work with him closely the last few years. And you've got a Blaine Chocolate, right?
Yeah.
Whole another flip side of flies and lines and what he requires out of a rod to make his specific techniques and his objectives attainable. Then we've got, again, a number of folks, Rob Fordyce down in the Keys, who's helped us a lot on the big game side of things. Jake Jordan, too. Again, another totally different personality and aspect of fishing, right? Where he's chasing marlin, big, big game stuff on a fly rod, and what he requires out of a tool is going to be totally different than Jason, and vice versa. So it's been a unique environment and a unique group of people. And we've had a number of really great folks before that have come and really imparted some great wisdom and been great supporters and great advisors. And, always looking for people that have a little different point of view on something and can contribute in different areas as, more and more techniques evolve and people get really hyper focused, right? That's been another interesting component because early on, like a lefty was very heavily trout focused and smallmouth bass focused and things like that. Lefty did a lot on the saltwater side, but it was a really diverse kind of international type of following. As the sport, as the industry, whatever has evolved, we find a lot more people that are really hyper focused in a certain area with a certain technique, certain species, and they have a lot of cool things to share. And we've been trying to, again, build a team of friends and family that are good at sharing that type of information and can provide the greater fishing community with something.
That's where you answered my original question of like, how do you help people take it to the next step? And the great thing is you have the rods, but then you have all these people, the Jasons and Eds who are out there, and you could say, hey, this person can help, whatever, coach or read their book, right? So you have these people that are using your stuff and they can help people through their information, right?
Absolutely. And it's about sharing information, not showing, right? And those folks are great at sharing that information and, again, just helping people improve their time on the water. And it's not all about making a big cast or catch a big fish, right? It's just kind of figuring out what it is to get them to the next step where they're a competent, happy, productive angler, right?
Yeah, totally. This is great. Okay, and what about, I know Rick Pope, I haven't heard recently. I know he was struggling with some stuff. He's still with us, or what?
Yep, he is. He's down at his ranch in kind of the hill country, Texas, enjoying his time, and he's not as involved really anymore. Frank Paul King's been running the company for the last couple of years, but he's doing well. He's still around, and he was just
oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah, just awarded. We support the False Albacore Fest in North Carolina, and he was just given a kind of a lifetime achievement type of award there. And they did a little video on him, and that's cool to see. And he's hanging out. He's got a good tan and wearing a Hawaiian shirt. So
yeah. That's good to hear, because I think last time maybe he was struggling, but like all of us, right? We all struggle with stuff. There's health stuff that comes up, but you got to work through it, right? It sounds like he's doing better. That's great to hear. And the false albacore, so that is because that's something in your wheelhouse, right? Not just those species, but like you're into salt quite a bit too. Or do you kind of do a little bit of everything out there?
Yes, I've definitely have the advantage, the opportunity, lucky enough to do a little bit of everything, and I still get teased by my partner or even by my parents. Like, what are you doing? Well, I'm in Montana now. I'm out in North Carolina now. I was just down on the Texas coast, and it's work. It's product development. It's understanding how people are fishing. But that was my first time in North Carolina doing the Albie thing. And I can definitely see how that's an awesome opportunity and just a ton of fun. And if you want to test a rod and a reel and lines and flies, that's a great proving ground. If you haven't done it, definitely consider it.
Right. What comparison? I know we've had a couple of episodes on false albacore, but how does that one compare to any of the other species out there as far as what would be the closest comparison species-wise to them?
I kept thinking about it when I was running around in the boat with these guys, and we were doing a lot of filming and, content photos and stuff, but we fished quite a bit. And I was like, man, this is just a obtainable tuna. I have a big thing for yellowfin tuna, fished them this summer down in the Gulf, but it can be a challenging prospect, right? On the Gulf side of things, you typically have to have a larger boat. You have to run. I mean, I think we ran 100 miles. So it could be expensive. It could be time consuming. You have the higher end expensive tackle component with these albies for the most part, right? I mean, we ran 10, 15 minutes from the dock, and you still have to chase them. It's still a challenge. But to me, it's like, this is just a more obtainable tuna for anglers. And if anglers really want to get sharp and understand how to quickly load a rod and unload it, line management, how to fight a fish, I mean, this is the place to do it. That's reasonable, right? Not difficult to get to. Don't have to have a ton of money or a big sport fishing boat, anything like that. Like, you can get it done, and they will kick your butt, and you will learn a lot about what you're not doing right.
Yeah, that's it. That's a big benefit. So yeah, you can get them in closer than going hundreds of miles out.
Mm-hmm. You can get them in close, and again, to me, it's just a obtainable baby tuna that fights just as hard, and just a really beautiful look to it. I'm not a fisheries biologist at all, but the coloring on them and just how their body is shaped is something that's incredibly fascinating to me.
That's sweet. This is good. I love getting the update, and we'll have a few more update questions for you. I want to talk, you have a story I think we're going to share about kind of indicator versus like tight line versus indicator. And I think that's something we just had a kind of a live webinar, and Bob Lindquist was talking about fishing, kind of the underhatch, basically the emerger stage. And he was talking about like how the indicator was a very key technique for that. But talk about your story and tell me how these two things differed and how you would know which one to fish, because I feel like they both work well, but when do you use which one? So what did you have going in Montana there?
So, I mean, absolutely. And both are important tools to have in the toolbox. I hate when people say versus, right? Because there is that back and forth of, well,
like one is the better one.
Yeah, one's better than the other. And, they shouldn't be. No one technique is better than the other. But to me, is to be able to have that in your back pocket, be able to fish those effectively, right? Because conditions are going to change. And the anecdote I was thinking about last night when I was sitting up awake was, so I was in Montana a couple weeks ago with some friends, good anglers. Some work in the industry, some work outside of it, but they're serious anglers. And, it was tough, right? The winds were gusting 20, 30 knots. It was November, Northwest Montana, right? So it's not going to be beautiful. Granted, we had a few 50, 60 degree sunny days, which, as you know, bright sun presents its own.
Not as good either, right? Not always good, right?
Yeah, full of challenges. But, we were in this stretch rowing to Madison. As the guys, the water's pretty skinny. We're going to be dragging bottom and playing bumper cars here. I'll try to get you guys in some good streamer sections, but it's going to be fast and furious and tough. And one of my very good friends who I've fished a lot with and have some industry work with in the past, he's a very skilled, very serious indicator angler. And that's what he wanted to do. And as a man, I get it. That's what you want to do. And that's where you find success, right? Which is another component to this story, because he hasn't fished Montana a ton, but he's like, I find success in a lot of different waters around this country and the world. I mean, he's an internationally traveled angler. And that's kind of that confidence approach, right? This is the technique. I know I can catch fish just about anywhere. And it's like, all right, I get that, but the water's not really presenting well for that. The shots aren't going to be great. Then add in a upstream or a downstream wind, right? And it's just going to be really tough to keep that indicator down and keep those flies from pulling out. So like, man, let's pull over to this spot. There's probably 100, 150 yard run. It's like, let's swing some flies through this. This isn't going to be good indicator water, but to me, throwing a streamer, swinging a streamer is probably the best shot we're going to get. We had a bank above us that was probably just over shoulder height, so call it 5.5 feet. So a traditional single hand rod, I was kind of, I don't know if this is going to work either, guys. So I was floating two guys. My buddy wanted to indicator fish it. And it's like, all right, well, I've got two little light two-handed rods rigged up, ready to go. He's like, well, I'm going to try to indicator fish it. All right. We've got a downstream breeze that's just, making life challenging. He wandered up to try to fish the indicator. Other angler on the boat was, again, skilled, efficient angler, wanted to single hand cast it. I was like, all right, guys, well, I'm just going to sit here for 10, 15 minutes, let you all fish it through, let you struggle, right? The guy throwing.
One guy's swinging flies and one guy's indicator fishing.
Yeah, but he was swinging on a single hand rod to start.
Okay.
So he had to really adjust his cast, throw that back cast high up over the bank, and then you'd be all with line management. It's like, I know I don't ever like to tell anybody, well, this is what you should do, right? Okay, everyone can kind of fish their own way, figure it out. But here's what I might suggest. And I only brought little light two-handed rods in the boat. I wasn't going to even mess with anything else because I kind of knew how it was going to play out. So they fish it through. The one guy's kind of struggling with line management. I mean, again, it's gusting winds. You got to make a high back cast and try to kick a line out.
Yeah, and 30 knots is that equal? Is that less or more than 30 miles per hour?
So I mean, it's a weird mathematical equation. It's a little bit more, but I try to keep it in the knots for the technical folks out there, for the Coast Guard captains out there.
Yeah, the Coast Guard. Yeah, to me, that's like a foreign language, but yeah, it's close.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 point something miles more.
Okay.
Again, I don't know why they use that measurement difference, but call it gusting, 20 miles to about low 30s ballpark. So they both fish this through and they're kind of struggling and nothing's happening. I'm rowing them down the river in the drift boat. And I'm like, you never want to be the angler that's, all right, guys, well, I'm rowing you, but I'm going to step up here and catch all these fish.
You're like the guide almost.
Yeah, you're kind of guiding and you're the host. And like, you don't want to show people up, but this isn't the conditions for these techniques. So grabbed a little two-handed rod, flung probably 75 yards through this really nice, almost steelhead-esque run on the Madison. And, picked up two nice brown trout. And I was going, well, I'm happy with this. This is probably the extent of what we're going to accomplish today. And finally, they picked it up, which was great because they were all enthusiastic once they were doing it. But it's one of those things, well, if you're not practicing this type of technique or you don't spend some time doing it, whatever the technique is, you're going to struggle, right? People tend to wait till they get on the water and are forced into casting. You're fishing this way, right? To go, oh, I had to figure this out. Okay, well, now's not the time to be really working on your technique and working on your cast, right? Try to show up prepared for all 3 techniques or 4 techniques, whatever it is, and you'll be a little bit more effective. And then the same thing happened a day later. We were fishing much smaller water, kind of more pocket water behind a dam, and buddies, same thing. I just want to indicator fish it. The wind was gusting downriver, gusting through this canyon like you could not believe. And I mean, I could tell, right? Second the indicator hits the water, the flies are pulling up, and well, maybe this is time to high stick it, right? Real thin leader, real small flies. And even then it was a challenge, right? My sighter, everything was blowing way downriver and it was a struggle. But the point of that anecdote is I get there's confidence techniques everyone has, but like try to spend some time working on other techniques and just having that in your back pocket when those conditions don't allow for the type of fishing you're most confident in.
Be ready to change.
Yeah, be ready to change and be able to adapt, but don't let this change. Well, this is the first time I picked up this type of rod in a year or 2 years, right? Like,
yeah, be ready.
Try to spend a little time being flexible.
That's something that I struggle with because I think you mentioned, the indicator fishing. It's almost like, I think you've done some steelhead fishing, right? I mean, it's almost like the any of these species, there's overlap, but yeah, indicator fishing, single hand casting, two-handed casting, there's going to be times when, yeah, the indicator is going to work better. Although some people feel like, like the swinging flies, some people are just swing flies, and that's all they do. And I think that's like the thing it sounds like that's your indicator guest. Like that's what he loved. He wanted to make that happen. But, in some cases, it's not going to work as effectively as changing it up.
Yeah, not going to work as effectively. And to be honest, I'm just as stubborn just from the other side, right?
Yep.
It's fall in the west. I'm going to throw streamers or I'm going to swing streamers because I have a lot of confidence in that. I know I could do it well. And yeah, you probably won't hit the higher numbers that most people want or expect, but it's a confidence technique. And some of those two-handed techniques, right, you could fish in nastier weather or when the wind's not favorable or you don't have the room to cast, where other techniques just won't work, right?
Yeah.
You just can't make it happen despite trying as hard as you want.
So you guys had a little success, or what was the final, on that day when you had all the different techniques?
Oh, after probably about a 3 or 4 hour float and like I said, a lot of dragging bottom and pulling over and trying to make stuff happen, swung up 3 or 4 fish. And one of the other anglers, my buddy, who eventually switched over to a handed rod, hooked into a few fish. And I could all but guarantee anybody else that floated the river that day, regardless of their technique, probably just struggled. So to me, 3 or 4 fish on the swing, a couple nice browns was, something to be very happy about, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I would be happy with 1 fish on a swing, especially like the Trout Spey, because that's something, I think a lot of us out there haven't done a lot of. I think there's definitely people that are either single hand only and they're thinking about the Trout Spey or, two-handed stuff, or there's maybe a steelhead angler that's maybe like, well, maybe I'll drop down. The steelhead numbers aren't great this year. Maybe I'll go down and try some Trout Spey. What does that look like for you guys? Maybe talk about your lineup in your two-handed game. And do you cover kind of everything there, Trout Spey from low all the way up to the higher, bigger stuff?
Yeah, we do still. As a recovering steelhead angler, as I like to joke, gotten really into and I found the effectiveness and the enjoyment in the lighter two-handed rods. We make rods 2-weight, 4-weight, 6-weight, so cover a lot of the lighter swinging applications outside of trout too, right? I mean, they're great two-handed overhead rods if you're going out to Pyramid Lake or fishing some still water. If you're in an area with striped bass, right, you have some river striped bass or hybrids, whatever, great opportunity, great tool to swing some of those streamers for those fish. And all the way up to the kind of your more traditional larger salmon steelhead rods, 13-footers, 13.5-footers. I know our steelhead and salmon populations here domestically are not in great shape, really outside of the Great Lakes. So folks, heading to Iceland or doing some of the Atlantic salmon fishing other places, we got some of those heavier, longer rods, but seeing a lot of growth and a lot of interest in some of the lighter, two-handed, lighter swinging type of rods.
Would you like to level up your fly fishing game this year? Head over to smitty'sflybox.com, your one-stop shop for top-quality flies, tying materials, gear, and accessories online. Whether you're hunting trout in riffles, stock and steelhead in a slick, or tie-in in your garage late at night, Smitty's has the hooks, beads, dubbing, and everything you need to get the job done. Check out Smitty's right now at wetflyswing.com/Smitty's. That's SMITTYS. Smitty's. Get what you need at smitty'sflybox.com. Experience the waters of Bristol Bay at Togiak River Lodge, where fly fishing meets Alaska's rugged beauty. This is the place to complete the Alaska Grand Slam with all 5 salmon species, rainbow trout, Arctic char, and more, where each day offers a new Alaskan adventure. You can visit TogiakLodge.com right now to start planning your Bristol Bay experience with Togiak River Lodge. Yeah, that's great. We've been mixing around, kind of just got up to Alaska, Togiak River Lodge. We were swinging for Chinook for my first time swinging, 9 and 10 weights, and it was similar to steelhead, just heavier gear, right? What about on the lighter end? So what were you using that day when you were swinging on the Madison? What was your length and weight there?
A little 11-foot 4-weight. So grain window wise, I had about a 300 grain, real short scientific anglers. They're one of their Spey light Skagit heads, which is about 15 to 17 feet. But typically on that type of 4-weight, right, I'll fish a 250 to 275. Again, a little bit more wind. It's fishing a little heavier fly just to get down. So bumping up the grainage definitely helped. But, kind of that 200 to 300 grain range seems to be pretty ideal for most trout fishing scenarios. Again, it depends on the rod, depends on the tip and the fly and a number of factors. But that lighter grainage, and, if you think about it, right, it's really not too much different than your 7 or 8 weight single hand rod. Just, to me, more efficient, right? Easier to pick up and reposition the line, which you enjoyed fishing those heavier rods for salmon, right?
Yeah, because we were casting. I mean, that was my first time, I think, casting the T17, I can't remember, T18. We were using heavy stuff and big and heavy, it was heavy. And then also when you get a big fish on, those Chinook are definitely different than a steelhead.
Definitely behave differently. But yeah, that's a lot of weight to move. And if you can have a little bit longer lever to pick it up and reposition it, to me, that makes life easy, right?
Yep, the lever was the other big thing because they were 14 footers for the most part. And that was a big part of just, you realize it, when you're Spey, you're out in the water, shallow water, and your ankle's up to your waist, that changes the whole cast. That makes it harder in a lot of ways, unless you have a good lever.
Yeah, and it may not seem like a huge depth change, but when you're trying to pick up that head and then pick up a big long sink tip or even a shorter sink tip, right? I mean, it definitely has an impact on your casting stroke and your positioning for sure.
Yep, exactly. Well, this is cool. I love that we've transitioned into the two-handed because I think that definitely, like I said, lots of people are wanting to get into this. So if somebody's listening here and they're thinking the Trout Spey, you think that 11-foot, is the 4-weight, what do you think is all around the 9-foot 5-weight for two-handed Trout Spey rods? What would that be?
Grainage wise, and there'll be some variance between rod manufacturers and companies, but I kind of think that 3-4-weight can cover a lot. Right, that mass in that head gives you a little bit more flexibility for throwing streamers. Doesn't mean you can't dial it down, right, and put a Scandi style head and little intermediate tip, right, throw some soft hackles or something lighter. But I think in most scenarios, that seems to be a good kind of all around, like you said, kind of your 9-foot 5-weight. You could do a couple of things with it. You could fish it a lot of different places, different styles of fly.
What's your rod? What's the name of your rod? Do you have a few different styles, or what's the rod if they're going to pick that up?
Yep. So in our lighter rod lineup, it's called the Professional 3 series, and for the lighter rods in that family, we do a 11-foot 2, 11-foot 4, and then 11-foot 6 weight, and feel that covers a lot of your trout fishing, freshwater stuff, even some warm water applications.
And you think the 11-foot is that a good all around, not 11.5 or 11 is kind of what you think is the best length for what you guys do?
That seems to kind of hit middle of the fairway, and some of that will have to do with the length of the head, right? Length of your tip, right? Just to be able to pick that up efficiently. But for the most part, and not just TFO wise, that seems to be the more common length, just because line and head development is, a million miles away from what it used to be.
Right. Yeah.
Back in the day, right? I know last time we spoke, we were talking about when I was in Michigan trying to figure out how to cut down old wood cutter, 55-foot lines, and fish smaller rivers with the heads and the tips that were available.
That's right. Yeah, you were there in the early days. You remember the wing cutter.
Yes. I'd say fortunately, because that's what we had, but we had 14-foot, 8-9 weight rods, wind cutter lines, and we were cutting up, old Cortland sink tip trolling lines for the Great Lakes to try to make tips and try to make it work and figure out how to fish these smaller rivers more effectively. So now, granted, it still is complicated when you're getting into grainages and grams and different things like that, but the lines available now are so much farther ahead, so much more advanced that it seems like an 11-foot or 11.5-foot seems to be a little bit more common length rod because it pairs well with these shorter heads and lines.
Yeah, the short heads. And then that's the other cool thing is that with the Trout Spey is that you have a couple of things. You can go into the bigger, heavier, meaty flies, but then you can also cut back down to, say, just soft tackles, right? Swinging light soft tackle. And if the difference is, what would be the line for if you had an all-around line? It sounds like you have some scientific anglers. What would be that line for if you had to pick one? Is it that Skagit one you mentioned?
Yeah, I would probably pick something like a shorter Skagit head. Again, kind of hit that 200, 300 grain window, but something in that 15 to maybe 17, 15 to 18 foot range. Still allows you to fish in close if you're in tight quarters, but you can still carry some line. A lot of great Scandi or more tapered fly lines out there that definitely work when I'm swinging a light two-hander and punching out a big streamer, right? I want something big and nasty to kick that fly out and unroll that fly line, and oftentimes nasty wind, and sometimes something a little bit more tapered doesn't always work or might take a little bit more time to dial in.
Right. And like anything, you get your quiver, you get going, and then eventually you'll add some, right? You'll have your setup, and then you'll have, your 12 rods or whatever, everything covered, as we go.
Yeah. The spiral comes on pretty quick, and then you'll have too many rods and too many lines, and like everything you fly fishing, right? Then you'll go down the wormhole. And
that's right. So getting started, but this is good. I like to simplify it. So getting started, the 11 or 11 and a half foot in that range, and then it's called your professional 3 series. That's series? Yeah.
The professional 3 series is a good lighter two-handed rod to start. And we have some heavier lengths too, if you're steelhead or salmon fishing, or if you just wanted to do more two-handed overhead casting, right? And that's one of the great advantage of a lighter two-handed rod now these days, right? You could two-hand overhead cast it a lot easier. So if you're just struggling setting your anchor, getting the line out there right, you could just do a little simple two-hand overhead cast, dump that fly out, and get flies in the water and you're fishing. So
how are those rods? And you'll be the perfect person to answer this, because I have a TFO rod. It's I want to say it's an 8 weight, maybe a 13 foot something, and it's a great rod. It still is a great rod, and I'm not sure if it says Lefty Cray on it, but it's one of the series. And I probably bought it in the 2010s, so it's probably 15 years old. How does that rod compare to, say, the new 8 weight 13 foot? Is that rod still a good rod out there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no real bad rods out there if they work for your casting stroke and you enjoy fishing them. But one of the key things to consider, even if you're not really into the techie side of things or materials, is what we've been able to do, and the materials that we have the advantage of now is they're so much lighter, so much more responsive. And again, at the end of the day, if you're just carrying and casting less weight, going to be more efficient, going to enjoy it more. But the material advancements.
So the rods are lighter. That's the biggest thing. The rods are quite a bit lighter now than 15 years ago.
Yeah, quite a bit lighter. Cork handle materials have improved, guides have improved. There's been a lot of really cool material advancements that definitely have helped just improve the tool, right? It's about improving a tool and making someone's job a little bit easier.
Yeah. Do you think what do you think are the biggest improvements, say, like keep on that last 15 years or so? Without giving away any secrets, obviously, but what do you think with what your lineup, or maybe just fly rods in general? What do you think are the top few things that have changed in that time?
Yeah, just the graphite, carbon fiber we're able to use, and the access we have to it now is so much different than even 3 years ago, 5 years ago, right? The material advancements, and a lot of that's credit to the aerospace industry and a lot of other industries that are fun focused, right? They're about a business and they're about some serious things, but as that's filtered down to fly rod manufacturing, the materials and the rod, the blank, have improved greatly, and guide materials too, just thinner, lighter, stronger guides have definitely made the whole process much, much easier.
Oh, it has. So even a guide, like a little lighter guide, that makes a difference on the rod action and everything.
Oh yeah, it affects action, but again, if you're handling it, and I always have this debate with the Euro nymph high sticking folks, because you hold up something and you might not really notice a tenth of an ounce or whatever, really lightweight, but at the end of the day, if you're holding that rod in the air, it's gonna show up, it's going to affect you. And
yeah, it adds up. That is the big thing.
It all adds up, at the end of the day, it definitely all adds up.
Yeah, that is a big thing. I think with the Spey, again, look back at the history of, the heavy rods, is like, yeah, if it's a super heavy rod, you're holding that thing, you're casting it, at the end of the day, you're tired, versus, say, a nice, light, efficient rod. You can sit there all day long. And that's what happened with the two-handed game, right? Is that they got to a point where it was just as easy to hold and cast a two-handed rod as it was a 9 foot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know when that change happened, but somewhere it happened. Was there a time where you can kind of look back and say, that year or that period, things really just got lighter? Or the tech got?
I don't know if I have a specific time, but I do remember fishing those longer 14 foot, 13 and a half foot rods and putting like I said, lead core line on the reel before putting backing and a fly line on there, just trying to help balance it out and make
Oh, right.
a little less cumbersome. And, probably the last 10, 15 years, maybe, as advancements across the board have come as well. I'm not going to weigh this reel down to try to help balance this rod. And
No kidding.
right, the rod's getting lighter, the reels are getting lighter, and everything's just becoming more efficient. And now could sit and fish a little 11-footer all day. And
what's your take on? We had recently had an episode with Mark Bale, who talked about some of the Rio Reddington, the history there, and it was really interesting because you go back to the guys behind that and stuff. But we talked a little bit about too on the line. What do you call it? I've heard it called the nuclear arms rate or the fly. Like you got these rods that started, like we're saying, they started slower, and then the rods got faster, and then the lines had to keep up with them, right?
Yeah,
because they're getting faster and faster, and then all of a sudden you turn around, and you're like, wow, we got these super fast rods. Now people are kind of saying, well, maybe that slower action rod is still good. What's your take on that? Do you feel like you've seen that happen since you've been here, and how have you guys played into that with your lineup?
Yep, and I find that that phrase is hilarious, but I find just the premise of the whole thing confusing, but also one of those I just kind of turned my head to chuckle at, right?
Yeah, totally.
As rods got faster and stiffer, and people either they couldn't load it, couldn't figure out how to load it, or it just wasn't the right rod for them, but they were told or conditioned to believe, well, this is going to make you a better caster in saltwater or highway or wherever, right?
And then line up and then just do a one heavier line or two weights heavier to make it work.
Yep. So then I felt like line manufacturers got pushed into a weird position. Well, now we have to make all these lines so much heavier. It totally changes the foundation of the rod. And I still get that question all the time. Well, I just put a line or two heavier on it. Well, maybe that's not the right rod for you, because we make a lot of moderate, softer, slower rods that probably will work better for your casting stroke and your style, that you don't have to overload. You don't have to fight or try to learn how to change your casting stroke to adapt to the rod. And it's funny now, and there's some companies that are like, well, we're going back to more moderate, fast type of rods because, we're the first ones to do it. And I was kind of chuckled. Well, a lot of companies have done it for a while, but it kind of got out of trend and became gauche to fish a moderate action or a slower rod. I don't understand that. To me, that's why companies make a bunch of different rods, right?
Exactly.
So we can make a bunch of money. It's have different tools for different styles of anglers and different scenarios, right? So it's kind of a funny thing, and I'm happy in some respects to see it start to go back the other direction, where it's not just, this is the latest, greatest, fastest, stiffest rod that you need, but you got to put, another 50, 100 or more grains on the rod to actually load it and make it feel good for you. So
that's it. It's cool to hear. Yeah. Because you're in the middle of it and you see it and stuff. And I feel like, where the challenge comes is people, especially that are new,
mm-hmm.
You come into it and you're like, okay, what do I need? But again, that's where it goes back to these packages. Why that's such a solid option. And maybe let's hear that, because we talked about that a little bit on the last one, but I think the rod combos are great for beginners, man, because, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. You literally can just go grab a thing and you're fishing. Talk about your rod combos. Has that changed in the last year or so, or do you guys still, I can't remember the last one, was the NXT.
Yep. So the NXT Black Label is one of our more recent combo kits, and we've had the NXT combo kit in our lineup for a number of years for a lot of important reasons. I mean, it just eases that burden into getting into the sport, cuts out a lot of the BS, right? Trying to understand how to match a reel, how to match a line. And there's a cost component too, right? I mean, as great as fly lines are now, I mean, they're expensive and they have to be expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that could be challenging for people just getting into it, or if you're trying to upgrade, improve your tool set a little bit. Like that's a big bite, right? If you don't really know if it's going to work for where you're fishing, how you're fishing, or if you're going to fish multiple places, right? That could be a serious barrier to entry. So we've always tried to focus hard and heavy on high quality combo kits, which has been kind of a cool shift in the industry lately. Yes, there's some really low price entry level combo kits, and not to be disparaging, but they have their place. But I think more and more companies are doing a really good job lately, last couple of years, and putting out some really high quality kits, really nice reels on them, quality rods, improving the fly line, right? Every time they do a reintroduction, it seems like the lines are getting better and better, higher quality. I think that helps a lot of people, and it just makes it, again, a little bit easier to get into, or if you're trying to upgrade, or if you're getting into going on a trip, right? New technique, new fish that you don't know if you're going to become obsessed with, or you're only going to fish it once a year, or maybe this is a one-time deal. So it just makes that whole process a little bit easier. We've been challenged with tariffs and price increases, so we fought hard to try to introduced kits. We have 2 new kits out. One that's kind of more entry-level, limited models, right? A 5 and an 8 weight, which still middle of the fairway everywhere, right? You could fish a 5 and an 8 pretty much everywhere. And then we introduced another kind of higher end combo kit, a little nicer reel, a little nicer line on it. And some of those things for those anglers that want to get started seriously, right? They don't maybe want to buy a combo kit off the internet that's got flies and leaders and waders and all kinds of other stuff with it, but they're really serious about it. Or good, they're serious about improving the equipment they have now and want to step up to something that is serious. It's going to last them a long time and hold up to the rigors of their fishing.
Yeah. What is that, the next level of that combo kit? What's that one called?
Yep. So that's called the Dispatch Combo Kit. So that one is a 4 model offering, 4 weight through an 8 weight, all 4-piece rods, but we were able to get a cast aluminum and a machine reel made. So it's going to be a fully sealed drag system, which isn't often offered in the combo kit space. So a reel that will handle some salt water, or if you're just fishing sandy, muddy creeks, things like that. Again, moderate fast action. So a great learning tool, but also a tool most anglers, I feel like they could continue to work through their angling career and be successful with and enjoy casting the thing. And then again, it's just improving the fly lines, right? Fly lines are tricky, and you don't want to force people into a real expensive fly line right out of the gate, but you also want to have something they can fish with and be confident fishing.
Be good to go. And the fly lines is an interesting piece too. Are your fly lines, how do you guys do that?
That's an OEM, a special project line we get made for us from one of our suppliers, but we try to keep them as we continue to evolve. I'm trying to keep kind of a more general, call it a trout style taper, right? Kind of a multi-purpose, do it all type of line. I've always been hesitant to get too specific and, fish or technique specific kits, because then it gets tricky. And right, everyone has their own preference and style.
Yeah. With the combo kit, it's good to be general, right? I think that this is the place where being the generalist is probably the best for a combo kit, right?
Well, absolutely. Be a generalist. And if you decide you want to upgrade your line or find a different taper line, different style line, definitely an option, but you're not starting off dropping over $100 on a line that you just don't know if it's going to work, or you'll just be scared to cast it in the lawn, cast it in the driveway. That's why I always tell people, like, when you're not fishing, go cast this line somewhere else and just get comfortable with the whole setup and
check it out.
Right. Then if you thrash it, tear it up, again, you're not out $100 or more.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And again, going back to Jason and some of your other, the great folks, in your network, you could basically, have them, they're casting, right? They're not only casting, but they're telling you, giving you feedback, but they're the ones that could say, nay, yay or nay, right, on these things. Like, is this one good to go? And it's cool. So you got the 5 weight, the 8 weight, the Dispatch combo. So that kind of covers your combos. So if somebody's coming in, you got kind of one for whoever you need there.
Yep. So we've got 2 options: the Pilot combo kit, which is just the 5 and the 8 weight, then the Dispatch, which is 4, 5, 6, and 8. So little everything on the freshwater side, and even up to a light saltwater application combo.
Perfect. Well, let's go back. I don't want to leave Trout Spey we were talking about. So we talked about the rods. I think we have that set up. We talked about the line. What else have you done a lot of Trout Spey now? Do you feel like you're doing as much as the steelhead now, or how does that look? Because it feels like Trout Spey is still, I hear a lot about it. It feels like it's growing. Do you see that out there in folks with, anglers?
See some growth. Again, it tends to be more experienced anglers that have probably swung for steelhead or for salmon. But I have trout rivers, trout fisheries close to them, or trout fisheries that they just spend more time. It's been a while since I've touched a steelhead. Nothing against them, just...
No, I know. I'm the same way. I mean, I'm my home river. I mean, I know the numbers are a little bit better, but I mean, I took a break. I don't think I didn't fish for a couple years. And that's not saying that's the right thing. I'm just saying that was me. I was busy and stuff, but it's tough, right? When the numbers are down, you're like, well, okay, I don't know. Am I impacting things or what, right? But I feel like there are some positives. We have done some episodes where we've talked about steel, so I don't think it's all negative. I think there are some positives, but I hear what you're saying, basically, expand out and try new species where there's more abundant.
Yeah, I agree. Not all negative. Unfortunately, it's kind of taken that connotation lately, and I'll still, in between the show season, go out and try to swing around Washington State or go fish in clear water. And it's kind of one of those challenging things with any river, right? It's, well, the news is all bad. People stop traveling there, stop fishing it. It's like, well, to me, it's like if people aren't invested and care about a river or a resource.
Exactly.
Then you're less likely to be able to rebuild it and have enough momentum to fire it up again. And the people in power to care.
Yeah. I think the media there is a little bit too on that, is that you hear all this and it's almost like how, you hear things that aren't necessarily fully true. I mean, it's like you hear the negative, but there are some positives in there that maybe you're not hearing as much about.
But yeah, there's positives. And again, it's about people that care about it. And if you're not traveling there to fish it, or if you're not talking to your elected leaders or whomever are making policies, right? Less people talking about it, less people being obnoxious about it. It's never a good thing. And I hate to see that on the salmon and steelhead rivers. Seems like there's some better, more positive energy coming, but I kind of see that happening in some trout rivers too, right?
Oh, you do?
Just the amount of people that are traveling there and fishing it, and you fish the same techniques, fish the same flies, same style. And I think there's a higher opportunity for people to get frustrated with it, right? Instead of looking, all right, maybe I could swing this river, or maybe I could adjust my technique, do something a little bit different and be successful.
Let's take a break and check in with Jackson Hole Fly Company right now. The right gear can turn a good day on the water into an unforgettable one. Jackson Hole Fly Company's combo kits are built to match the rhythm of the river, giving you everything you need in one simple package. Each kit pairs a perfectly matched rod and reel with essential accessories, ready to fish right out of the box. From the beginner-friendly Crystal Creek to the high-performance Flat Creek, there's a setup for every angler. And don't forget about their packs and slings. I've been loving my Jackson Hole Sling Pack for a number of years now. The perfect size to fit all your gear, but not too heavy and not too big to drag you down. Check out their slings and rods and much more at jacksonholeflycompany.com. And you can support this podcast by checking in with Jackson Hole Fly Company today. That's perfect. That's a perfect segue into the, I think your book, which I wanted to touch on. I think we touched on it last time, but, pressured waters, right? Some of these areas around the country. We just did that episode on the, with Bob, and we were talking about back in New York, in some of the pressure waters, the Delaware, right? I mean, there's super technical, but can be pretty heavily pressured. Talk about your book. Give us a heads up before we start to take it out of here. First off, what's the name? How is that going? And are you thinking about writing another one?
Yeah. So the book that's going to be out, it's available for pre-sale right now, but it'll be officially shipped and released the 16th of December. It's called Fly Fishing Pressured Waters. Wrote it with a longtime friend, great industry colleague of mine. And, we were sitting on a bridge in the Madison River and watching 40, 50 drift boats go by one day and just kind of watching how people fished it and started talking about their levels of success and really happiness with it, right? Because again, fishing is leisure time for most people. And we were just kind of struggling to see if people were really enjoying it and having the success they wanted. And, it's one of those funny lines to toe is you want these rivers to be busy and want people traveling there, spending money in town, doing all those things. But on the flip side is, is the resource being protected? Are people being thoughtful of what they're doing? And if they're only doing 1 or 2 trips a year, like, are they preparing themselves to be successful enough to have a good time to come back, right? Because you hate to see, just like anything, someone go on a trip one time, get frustrated. Most of the time it's not because of the guide. It's not because of the flies. It's because their lack of preparation. So we talk a lot about preparing in the off season, preparing for a trip. If you're going to go out with a guide, have some clear expectations, clear line of communication, kind of understand what you're getting into, and trying to have people leave with a more positive experience, not just blame the environment, the situation, the pressured rivers, whatever it is. Kind of look inward a little bit more, right?
Yeah, that's great. And we'll put a link to that. The great thing is when this goes live here, that'll be out there. People can take a look. Where's the best place to pick that book up? Where is it? Is it going to be everywhere?
Well, hopefully everywhere. Knock on wood. Right now it's available barnesandnoble.com, Amazon. Simon & Schuster, the big publishing house, picked up the distribution. So we're hoping it'll be a lot of places, and we'll start doing the consumer shows and doing a lot of dealer visits and events like that to get the word out. But we like to think it takes a little bit different approach than most fly fishing books that are maybe heavy on the technical side, heavy on flies and casting. We don't really talk about, fly design, development, things like that, but it's kind of more of that preparation and getting comfortable casting different ways, different fishing techniques, and, understanding your gear too. Something I think a lot of people forget about is selecting a net, selecting a hip pack, and making some conscious notes during the season of what works, what doesn't work. Cause that's, another big barrier to entry.
Yeah. The gear.
Okay. You bought the rod, you bought the reel, the line, but what about all the other gear? How do you take care of it? Does it actually work for where you're fishing, for your body type? All those little nuancy things that unfortunately, probably for us, right? A lot of it's trial and error. And I'm sure we both can admit to spending a lot of time and money investing in a different gear that, yeah, maybe it works really well, or no, this doesn't fit for what I like, right?
The gear is great. Yeah, I love the gear talk because there's so much. And you're right. You have one thing and then you maybe try something else and you're like, oh, that's not quite right. And you got a net and then maybe you need a large handled net. You need a small handled net. How does it fit on, your vest, your sling, all that stuff. So it's a good talk. Well, maybe we'll hold some of the gear talk for the next one and that'll be great. But let's take it out of here. We love to do a little segment. You mentioned it, our Wet Fly Swing Pro segment. Today I'm going to give a shout out to Percy, who I talked to on the phone, and we were chatting about what he's interested in. He's one of those guys that's, basically kind of new member in the community, but he's kind of new and wants to get into this Trout Spey, and really just two-handed rods in general. And he's sucking up the information and all that stuff. So let's give a shout out to Wet Fly Swing Pro. I wanted to mention Patagonia. They're a big partner of ours this year, and we're going to give a shout out to the Swift Current waders. I think on the Gear Talk, that's again something that we love chatting about. But Patagonia also talked about, when we did a podcast with them, they talked about this new, I guess it's kind of a hip sling cross pack. It's like it's not waterproof totally, but it's kind of a convertible pack. So let's start there. We're going to give a shout out to Patagonia Wet Fly Swing Pro. But for you, what is your pack right now? Are you using a pack? Are you using a vest? What's your thing? Do you have a bunch of different things out there?
Mostly hip packs.
Okay, hip packs, yeah.
I used to use the vest back in the day, but
me too.
Right, they could be cumbersome and kind of get in the way. Different slings and different packs, and I still go through it. I'll go try it out in the shop, right? Play around with it and see, and I'll go in the nastiest, coldest, grossest conditions. And all right, if I'm standing in the river, my fingers are freezing. Can I operate it? Behind my back? Can I get to the zippers easy?
Oh, right.
Right. So there's a lot of those little nuancy things that I think people forget about, right? I see this cool pack. I think, oh, this is great. Is this going to work for what you're doing? And can you manipulate it when you're not in the best of shape? Or it's been a long day, right? You've been swinging a fly all day, no tugs, it's cold, it's rainy, right? Do you still have the dexterity to work it? Can you get to your net easily? Can you get to some other things?
That's true. Are you a full waterproof bag type of guy, or do you go to hybrid or have both?
I'll use both, kind of depending on the scenario, and that's an important thing to kind of figure out when you're first buying one, right? Is where are you going to be most times, and are you going to have a camera or a phone in there, and you need the full waterproof, or can you get away with something that's water resistant to some degree? Then after that, are you a conscientious person that's going to be great? This isn't a fully waterproof bag. Maybe I took a tumble, it got wet. Am I going to spend the time after fishing to dry it out, make sure everything's cleaned out?
I feel like I'm more of the waterproof, mainly because of the fishing, right? Steelhead and water, but also, environment, if it's raining a lot. And then I'm also that type of person that, if I take a dunk, I like to have stuff where I don't have to fiddle with it. But the disadvantage, is there a disadvantage of a waterproof pack? What do you think? Is there one? I mean, it's more expensive, but any other disadvantages?
I think sometimes the cost can be a hurdle. The amount of pockets, which I will kind of split down the middle, is sometimes it's a disadvantage. A lot of times it's an advantage. And I'm trying to speak generally, not specifically all waterproof packs, but they tend to have less pockets. And to me, less pockets are less places you could hide stuff or forget about something important, right? I have used a lot of different water resistant or even not water resistant packs, and they're great because they have a lot of pockets, but then halfway through a trip or at the end of the season, I'll find out I have 3 or 4 of something in there because I kind of forgot where I put it.
That's right.
Or, you have a tendency to accumulate more stuff, which typically you're not going to utilize that stuff if you don't remember where it is, or if you have it stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
You're just spending more time and money on something. And again, you have to carry it all day, right? Even though it's a minuscule amount of weight, it's still something that's going to be strapped to your hips or strapped to your back. And it's easy to lose things in packs that have a lot more pockets unless you're really focused. And I'm unfortunately not.
No, me neither. That's a good point. So the simplicity, right? That's a part of it. Like actually it can be a good thing.
Yeah, I think simplicity is an important factor to keep in mind. And again, sometimes less pockets are helpful, but if you're doing a big day hike, or if you're fishing with a couple other anglers and you need to carry more, maybe yield to a larger pack with some more pockets and different things. So advantages, disadvantages of everything. You just kind of have to spend some time
checking it out.
Yeah, checking it out, and then just I say make good notes at the end of the year or during the season of what's working, what's not working, and spend some time digging through it and make sure you're not just leaving a bunch of junk in there, right?
I love it. I love it. I think that's the fun thing about fly fishing. Another part of the aspect, right? The fact that the gear, it is kind of fun to, like right now, right? We're getting the winter. It's winter time. We're getting ready to think, okay, next year, what's going to look like? And right now I'm already thinking, I've got this new sling, that I'm going to think about, getting out there and testing, over the winter. But cool. Well, this has been good, Nick. I want to give you a couple random ones and then we'll get out of here. But give me a couple of tips to take that Spey stuff away. So if somebody we talked about Percy, he's wanting to do a Trout Spey. Let's say he picks up one of your TFO setups. He's got his Trout Spey. It's a 4-weight. He's going to be going out there on a Montana stream. What is your couple of tips you're telling him to have more success out there?
Outside of this, connecting your gear, when I say connecting a gear, meaning finding a rod action you like, pairing an appropriate line for it, finding a couple flies, no different than the steelhead game, right? Most trout anglers will have to dial back the amount of flies I bring, but I'll fish 2 or 3 flies usually. Tends to, no offense to my fly tying friends out there, but you don't need to bring as much. Then spend some time practicing, find a good instructor that can kind of help you. Because one of the things I see, regardless of the angler's skill level or experiences, because it's a little bit longer, heavier rod, they try to put so much power into it. And to me, it's a little bit lazier, a little bit easier type of fishing because you're not carrying a bunch of line in the air, right? You're setting your anchor, making your D-loop, kicking the fly out there. So getting people to kind of dial back the energy and the enthusiasm sometimes is a good thing to focus on. And then keeping just your standard casting principles in mind, right? It's not all that much different principle-wise, right? You need to set your anchor. You need to have a consistent rod tip path. You need to keep an eye on your tempo, right? Your speed, your cast, and still make your starting and stopping points and focus on where that rod tip's going. So a lot of those transition over, and I fear that sometimes that gets lost in the mix, right? Switching from single-handed to a two-handed rod.
Yeah, it's the same principles that, a single hand instructor will tell you apply exactly to the two-handed game, right? It's a little bit different, but the principles are all the same.
Yeah, principles are all the same. Then with the two-handed rod, to me, you have a much greater ability to learn to cast off of different shoulders, right? Switch hands. Make some casts that you probably wouldn't be able to unless you're incredible athlete, very ambidextrous as a single-handed angler. Like you could learn some casts that could really improve your odds. And again, it gets the fly back in the water much more efficiently than if you were going to try to struggle and make it work with a single-hand type of setup.
That's right. When you're out there swinging, when you make that cast, let's just take it to soft tackles. I'm not sure how much of that you do, but some of the smaller stuff, say you're swinging a little soft tackle, do you tend to just cast at a 45 degree down 60? Is it just your typical swing and then step just like you would steelhead fishing?
I'll mix it up. Some things I like to do, I like to at least try to remind myself when I'm swinging for trout or striped bass or whatever it is that aren't steelhead salmon, is be a little bit more of an active swinger. Like I won't just make the same, downstream 45 degree angle cast every time, right? Sometimes I'll power out a cast and strip it in real fast, right? Like a standard streamer retrieve, or I'll jig the rod, kind of pump it a little bit, and until I kind of figure out what's working, just mix it up a lot more than you would with your traditional quote unquote two-handed cast. Or, sometimes I'll just pick it up and do a two-handed overcast just to cover some water. So I think the ability to mix it up, change your retrieves a little bit, and just animate the fly a little bit more, right? Active swinging. Then varying your steps and your pace too, right? I won't just commit myself to, a 2 foot or a meter long step. I'll take a couple steps or I'll go back up. If I swing through a run, sometimes I'll make a cast straight upstream and strip it down real quick. So to me, you have a little bit more flexibility and you can have a little bit more of an active swing sometimes.
Yeah, and I guess that's because the difference with steelhead fishing is that they're just anadromous fish. They're not really feeding. They're coming in, you're doing this thing, which is just getting, they're not eating. But with trout swinging, these are fish that are feeding. Is that the biggest difference why you want to mix up all these different techniques?
I think that's a part of it. They'll hold in different areas. While I still take the mantra of, I'm going to swing this fly and try to push a fish down and really just try to piss it off, anger it into a strike, right?
You're still trying to piss it off. You're still trying to do that.
Still try to piss it off, but to me, they'll hold in different areas. And with a two-handed rod, I think you can manipulate the cast a little bit more, dump a fly in front of a boulder, then right behind it, or fish, especially with some soft tackles and things, fish some of that real riffly kind of bouldery water that you walk by, it doesn't look like any is sitting there, but To me, if there's a little depression or a little holding area, a trout will tend to hold there more frequently than, say, a steelhead or any type of anadromous fish. You can have a little bit more flexibility with it. I think you find probably more success doing that instead of your traditional, I'm going to swing it down and try to push this fish to the back of the pool until they have no choice but to be angry.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, a couple of just kind of more random ones here, and then we'll let you get out of here. So you mentioned the shows at the start. It sounds like you do a lot of the different shows. Do you have one that you feel like is a big one for you guys, or one you really enjoy out there? I know there's a number of them. What would be a good one for consumers to go to? What do you think are the best out there?
Oh, I enjoy any consumer show where people show up and want to cast rods and talk. It's one of those things where fly rods are meant to be picked up and played with. And, you still get some shows where people just walk by and, yeah, they may say something nice, but they want to come into the booth and cast a rod and ask some questions. We're big supporters of the fly fishing show group shows because that's how we market and advertise. Last number of years, the Denver show, I know that's a big population area. That's been a really positive one. A lot of excitement there. New Jersey still has a good crowd. Unfortunately, the Atlanta show's not happening this year, but that's been a strong one.
Oh, it's not. Oh, that's right. They changed their venue. They had some stuff, right? Some change ups there.
Yeah, they had some issues with scheduling and venue, which is too bad because that was a really exciting, enthusiastic crowd, both freshwater, saltwater, some younger folks, working on some dealer events in the state of Georgia just because the crowds and the energy there have been so strong. But
okay. And what is the dealer? What would a dealer event be? What would that look like?
Oh, so some of the stronger dealers that we work with in the state of Georgia are Fish Hawk in Atlanta, Alpharetta Outfitters, which is just kind of north of there. So I'll probably spend a little bit of time here, and I guess it would be January, February out there doing some dealer events, and that seems to be a thing post COVID that's picked up and been a little bit more obtainable for people that may not be local to one of the larger consumer shows. Is dealers, and not just TFO dealers around the country have really picked up on doing a lot of in-store events and casting day.
Oh, so these could be like a big, like a fly shop could run some sort of event.
Yep. Retailer fly shops are doing some really cool events, and they seem to have good crowd and energy. Again, a little bit more obtainable to people. They don't have to pay a big ticket price to get in. They're not forced to walk around a convention center if that's just not the environment they're comfortable with, right? They can go to a local dealer or hang out with their friends, talk to some of the shop folks. And I think there's been a kind of a positive shift post-COVID. More fly shops and retailers seem enthusiastic about doing those things and getting people out. More casual environment, they'll have food and music and things like that.
Totally. And that seems like a great thing to do. I feel like, there's some work there, obviously getting prepared, but I feel like bringing TFO down and maybe you or any ambassadors to be there and then have an event around it where maybe you're drinking some beverages and hanging out, right, and talking. It seems like that would be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun, and some of the more casual environments too, right? I could have a few beers and engage with people and tell stories and jokes, and
exactly.
You just get a little bit different crowd and some younger folks and people that are, again, really interested in it but may not have a big show close to them, right? Or may not be able to spend that, ticket price to go into a convention center and walk around, or maybe that's just not the environment for them. So a lot more dealer events have come up, and a lot of schools too have been popping up. And
schools, right? Yep.
Schools. I do 3 now a year with Jason Randall all around the country. So a lot of those learning environments and opportunities have definitely picked up, and there seems to be some high interest in kind of more of that one-on-one type of learning and getting people ready to go before the season starts.
Is that the school? I know, there's different names for things out there and all that stuff, but when you think of a school, what does that look like to you? Bring Jason out. How is that different from, say, anything else out there?
Because we could do both kind of more classroom education, right? So we could do some presentations. I do a lot of stuff on fish fighting and product design and kind of more of the streamer angle, where Jason does more of the Euro-nymph, high sticking, reading water, understanding trout behavior. But then we have the component to take people on the river, right? So it's almost like a couple-day guided adventure, if you will, where you could work with different people and kind of really help them refine things and help them understand their technique or the river they're fishing a little bit differently than if you were just sitting in a convention center watching a slideshow go by. So
yeah, it's a little hybrid. Yeah, and that's kind of how we look at it too. I think that you get a little bit of classroom, but there's a big chunk of on the water too, because I feel like
on the water, and it's not a high pressure situation, right? Then usually afterwards we have happy hour, so we're hanging out drinking, and people are talking, and I think you're just engaging with anglers regardless of your position, right? It's not a Jason and I talking to people. It's we're talking with them and having cool conversations. And I get to learn a lot about what works for these anglers or what they're struggling with. And they can share a lot with me, which has been pretty interesting the last few years.
That's great. Well, I think, Nick, this is probably a good place to leave it. I think I was just thinking about, on the first episode we did, you had, I think, a pre-list checklist where I think what we're going to do is put a little link to that so people can take a look at that checklist that you had there, because I think that's a good one on, getting ready for the trip and all that. But if anybody wants to connect with you or all your rods, tforods.com is the best place. And yeah, man, thanks for the time again today. This has been great. And I'm glad we were able to dig into some new topics, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your winter and spring here, and look forward to seeing you again on the road.
Hope you enjoyed that one with Nick. If you get a chance, check in with him. Let him know you heard this podcast. You can also, we mentioned it, wetflyswing.com/pro if you're interested in getting access to our members group. We'd give a shout out to Percy today if you're interested in taking this conversation deeper and learning and getting your casting to the next level. Wet Fly Swing Pro is the best place. We're also building trips together as we go. And we got some good ones this year if you're interested. I know Atlantic salmon. I've heard about pike, a number of species out there. If you're interested in connecting with anglers who are learning, who are heading out on trips together, this is your best place. And that's how we do it here in Wet Fly Swing Pro. All right, thanks for joining today. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'm excited to hear about your next adventure. If you haven't checked in with me, send me an email anytime, dave@wetflyswing.com. Hope you're having a good morning, a good afternoon, or evening, wherever in the world and the country you are, and hope to hear from you and talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.